Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. The Hey Chaplain podcast is a podcast for police officer wellness. On this special bonus episode, we're going to talk about one of the most frequent issues that I hear about at the police station, the inability of anyone to effectively recruit the youngest generation of adults. It just so happens that my friend Jim Dudley from San Francisco recently co-authored a book on the subject called Recruitment and Retention of Gen Z Law Enforcement Officers. So I brought Jim and his co-author, Janay Gasparini, onto the show to talk about it and to give us at least a few insights into what can be done. I hope that this episode is an encouragement to you, not only if your full-time responsibility is recruitment, but also for anybody who feels like they share in the overall responsibility to bring more people into the career. Hopefully this gives you something to work with. And it's for everyone who feels like they've never known a law enforcement career where they weren't undermanned. There is hope. Here's Jim Dudley and Janay Gasparini. Hello, Jim and Janay. How are you today?
Good morning. Great to see you, Jared. Thanks for having us on.
Yes, good morning. Doing well, and thanks for having us.
I'm glad to have you both. You guys have written a book together. Can you tell me why each of you wanted to pick the other one to do this project?
A long time ago, well, it feels like a long time ago, I met Jim because I had the great opportunity to write an article for Police One, and we really connected over our policing experience and also our educator experience. We're both college professors. And Jim became a mentor to me. So when we started doing this kind of research and this work and trying to plug the pieces together between what we were seeing with our Gen Z students and our colleagues in policing and this frustration, I couldn't think of anyone better than a friend and mentor who really gets it.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. Well, in the role of Methuselah, I've had a lot of experience in policing, 32 years of policing, 12 years of teaching now. I really feel blessed by the career that I've had, the opportunities I've had, and to meet somebody with the energy like Janay, it continues my goal of continuing my contributions to the profession and helping people like her. And, when we came up against this recruiting crisis and all the other stuff in 2020, it was a great opportunity to connect with somebody with really great goals and ideals, and it was a natural fit.
That's excellent. So the recruiting crisis, that's really the heart of what I want to talk about today. We've had a steady stream of young people who want to get into law enforcement over the generations, and that stream seems to have been reduced, maybe in some cases, to a trickle. So let's start with talking about the current group of young people. Can you define Gen Z? What is Gen Z? What age group are we talking about?
Folks who were born between 1995 and 2012.
Okay, so roughly the under 30 crowd right now. We're recording this in 2024. So if you got a police officer that's 28 or 30 or younger, that's our Gen Z people.
Correct.
We in our experience of teaching more than policing, we've seen the distinct changes in the Gen Z group of how they learn, the questions they ask. And we both have experience as police trainers, and we saw that as these questions were being asked in a classroom from this point of curiosity, it was natural. And as educators, it's our duty and responsibility to answer those. I think in some police academies where they're much more structured, you might have an instructor who would push back on, the idea of someone questioning what they're putting out there. So we saw it as a means of using university level pedagogy, of how we've approached students with gamification and videos, and not so much standing behind a lectern and speaking at the individuals there, but more involved, having interactive participation, giving them chances to take chances without risk of failure. And we know in the police academy, that during the learning domain quizzes, if you fail a quiz twice, you're done. You are out of the academy. So, we noticed the distinction of fear of failure being real in Gen Z, and we wanted to approach it, and we wanted to share what we've learned with others.
Now, as I get older, I am quickly reaching that old man, get off my lawn kind of, kids these days, phase of my life. But can you tell me, is the under 30 crowd genuinely different? Like, do they have a different culture than previous generations, or is this just how young people always are and we're looking at it in a new light?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on the porch telling people don't even walk across the edge of my lawn. And I think it is different. You and I I know I do. I get 2 hard copy newspapers because I can't read them on a screen. And if I look at a textbook or a book, I want to flip back a couple of pages. Everything's done on the screen today. I mean, with, few exceptions, my students don't want to look at an article or a paper. We very rarely exchange paper in class. And so we had to look at that approach of using the digital age of our approach, the fact that they're getting their news from these outlets. I teach courses in crime data and analysis, and it's hard to talk about those kinds of things when they're looking at TMZ for their news, or Snapchat or TikTok or things like that. And so we realize that small chunk learning also translates into real world chunk learning. If it's over 2 minutes, they're gone.
Janay, did you find that created a different culture among this generation?
Yes, I think so. I mean, we posit in the book that, yes, there is a gap. And I think just in the course of time, like something that kind of came out of the research was that, for example, my generation has much more in common with my parents' generation. I'm 42 years old, as opposed to, what I have in common with the younger generation. And one thing that we really kind of zeroed in on is that they are the first generation that from the start has had screens.
Yes.
They don't know the world differently. And I think that is, and I would also add social media. I think that's a major dividing or driving point. But we do say in the book that this is not unbridgeable. And, our biggest thing is like, well, this is the reality. So now with this reality, how can we leverage what we know about them to the benefit of policing? And they do bring some benefits.
It's a great point, because to pivot and use what we see as possible weaknesses and turn those into strengths for law enforcement ahead in the immediate future. I mean, there's some really good stuff there.
Okay, so this is the generation that has always known screens and social media, and probably several other factors as well. But those things can be turned and used in a good way, in a productive way, both in education and training for law enforcement. So how do you get them in the door to recruit them for law enforcement in the first place? Is there, and I know you did a lot of work on this, but is there some key, some takeaway that would be particularly helpful for me in recruiting?
Yeah, I think, we've done surveys, Police One, that Janay and I both write articles for. I host the podcast Policing Matters for them. And we've done surveys of Gen Z and veteran police officers and those young police officers that are part of Gen Z. And we've seen what they want. And I think we just need to change our approach to be more realistic and not, advertise with somebody in full SWAT gear, rappelling out of a helicopter with an AR and a canine under one arm and a knife between their teeth. Those are unrealistic portrayals of policing, and they want to help the community. I mean, we hear that so often in the surveys, and they are also fearful of walking a beat for 30 years. And so we need to demystify what policing's about, give more in-depth perspectives and portrayals of what you can do in an agency, even a small agency. There's so many different things that you can do to help kids at schools as an SRO, school resource officer, to help people on the street with mental health issues, by being a specialist there, by walking a footbeat in a business area. So there's so many different aspects of the job that we don't tell. And we've always, sat back in our chair waiting for people to come to us, but we've got to switch that around. And Janay's really made some great contributions about how we do that.
Janay, can you tell me, how does changing those recruiting posters, which are probably not posters anymore, how does changing that affect that generation?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things we're encouraging police administrators to do, and anyone in a leadership position, is really learn these generational characteristics and hone in on it. So what Jim and I did, we actually put together a survey instrument because, we kept sitting there and hearing, oh my God, these kids, blah, blah, blah. Surely we could relate in some aspects, but also having very kind of intimate, teaching them in very intimate settings, we also saw the good. So we are really, when we ask Gen Z, like, what is it that you want? What is it? What would make you stay at a job? What is exciting to you? Why are you coming here? Some of the responses that we have recorded in the book are rather surprising. And I think it's not what many administrators would expect. I think by focusing in on those generational characteristics that we've uncovered and that companies like Google has uncovered in their recruitment research of Gen Z, that's really what's going to be at the center of a good recruitment effort, really. And, we look at things like, right, they're tech savvy. You've got to get your recruitment and your hiring process into a smartphone. We even have our college students, some of them are writing their papers on their smartphone. And again, do we like that? No. But is that the reality? Yes. Right. We have to make it very applicable to them, right? They're a generation, as Jim said before, they want answers. They ask questions. They're used to that. They're used to a lot of back and forth. Their input was asked by parents and teachers far more than any other generation. And, Jim always likes to tell this story about, when you get out of you get out of the academy, you go into field training, and you're kind of just told to don't touch anything, be quiet, sit there and learn, right? That's not going to fly with this generation, right? So again, we're honing into these generational characteristics. And another one is a big, big one that just came across time and time and time again. And I feel like it is a timeless item that future police officers bring with them, that wanting to help the community, they want to make a change. But you have to recognize that their wanting to make a change is also being driven by a media narrative that has really done a disservice to policing. So part of the job too is, as Jim says, is to demystify that and say, hey, we understand what's out there and what people are saying, but do you actually know a police officer? Have you actually spent time with police officers? This is really what we're about. We have a society that was very confused about what they wanted from police officers. And I think one of the positives from that confusion and that upheaval, we're seeing police agencies now having a willingness to share tasks. For example, at my agency, we have mobile mental health. They're right in our police department with us, and understanding that, going back to Sir Robert Peel, right, we have to reflect what the public wants, right? I think that's a really big positive, that now it's kind of like, you don't have to be all things to all people. I feel as a profession, you're just kind of getting kicked around and like, do this now, do that now. And no question, the job has never been more grandiose. I mean, you have to wear so many hats, right? So again, my big thing, if you want to really recruit and get them in the door, well, first of all, please read our book. But I'm not trying to sell you anything here, but we really spend a lot of time laying out these generational characteristics. And that knowledge is power, because you really can leverage that to fashion your recruitment program.
Janay, I know we talk about it a lot, about, treating the Gen Z candidate as people, as individuals. And I mean, I don't know if anybody's adopted the 1-by-1 motto yet, but we really need to do 1-by-1 recruiting. And
what does that mean?
In the past, we've recruited, masses, but now we've really got to make that connection. And we need recruiters to really be invested in that job as a recruiter. make that one-on-one connection with the candidate and maintain it. And I'm not talking about hand-holding, not talking about lowering standards to attract, those who otherwise might not be good law enforcement candidates, but to, maybe look at some of our standards that are 40, 50 years old, dust them off and say, are these relevant to the job today? I mean, everybody wants a trained emergency vehicle operator, but with so many agencies saying we are not pursuing anymore, how important is it to wash somebody out of an academy because they can't stop within a fraction of an inch on an orange cone, for Pete's sake? Or climb over a 6 or 8 foot wall when even foot pursuits are being regulated to the point where, are we doing that anymore?
Now, I believe that the recruitment officer sincerely wants to change and is willing to push things out on social media and get things into the smartphone. I really believe that they're eager to do that. But then the recruit becomes an officer and enters into a culture that is very reluctant to change. What can maybe we do, maybe more on the retention end of things to keep Gen Z?
Yeah, I think it starts with leadership. I think it starts with changing the culture so that we are a movable object, not an immovable object. Believe me, in interviewing people on my podcast, I've interviewed so many great leaders that have no problem recruiting. And in this environment, that's something to be said. And I think it comes back to leadership. And I think if the troops at your agency feel that support, feel the leadership, see the innovation, see that their leader's going to go fight for them, push back on the media, push back to elected officials, I think that's really going to change the culture. And we've done the surveys at Police One, and one was really alarming in that only 7% of veterans officers at an agency would refer their department for others to join, and even less for their own family members. So we need to change that. I mean, we needed to find out why is that, and it comes back to leadership. It's pretty simple, but it's true. And the ones that are pushing back, I mean, we've seen some great leaders get the pushback to the point where they had to quit or leave their department. And I mean, I still acknowledge, those great leaders, but you need to balance to get behind the scenes, talk to the electeds, talk to the mayors, and explain, look, we're going to be one of those agencies in really dire straits if we don't change these things. It comes back to those intangibles of feeling support, feeling wanted. And when we're recruiting, like Janay said, we got to get on those electronic devices and we've got to get that constant contact to say, we want you. We really want you. The days of when I applied and there were 4,000 people lined up around the building to get their applications, those days are gone. Mm-hmm. And we'll always have that small percentage of legacies. My own 2 sons are sergeants in San Francisco police. I know so many officers whose kids have joined the police department because they know the inside baseball of policing. We need to keep pushing that out.
Janay, can I get your reaction to an idea that I have that, based on what Jim just said about only 7% being willing to recruit to their own department? I think there might be an unhealthiness in the millennial and Gen X officers, the older officers. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I'm still sworn. I'm still around my colleagues who I actually started with in 2006. So I know a lot of them are in leadership positions right now. I see fatigue. I see frustration. I think the events of 2020 really took a toll. And in the midst of this all, they're also trying to accommodate a very different way of coming into the profession, right? As I think it is a huge difference that even when I came on, it was you were fighting for those jobs. Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of the polar opposite. I think there has to be a lot more work done for supervisors, for middle management, for leadership, their wellness, right? They're not quite used to this idea of like, well, no, maybe I need to take care of myself. I think we are up against a cultural clash in the profession. It's something that really deserves attention 100%. And, how do we get the community support again? How do we kind of unpack and settle these errant media narratives? How do we work around political climates, all while trying to foster a new generation of police officers? So I guess my message here is really, I think it's a very, very tenuous and difficult situation to be in. And I don't want to pull any punches. I continuously speak with my peers who, again, are now in leadership. They're absolutely tired and frustrated.
Jim, in all this research, was there anything that gave you hope?
Yeah, I think the tide is changing now. I mean, I think we'll see it within the next 2 years. We've seen so many failed social policies. Oregon's changed their legislative amendments that legalize things like drugs. And I think the public's starting to realize they need police. They need law enforcement. And when I talk about leadership, I'm not just talking about agency leadership, but also in the families of our prospective candidates to say, yeah, we do see the need for law enforcement. We want you to be part of our community, and we support you if you want to join a local law enforcement agency. I don't think we saw that 4 years ago. I think we're still recovering from this, gut punch that 2020 was. We've got to adjust on many levels, and pushing back on the media is another one. And I think we're starting to see that some of the agencies saying this is something we really need to do, and they're investing in it. And we are seeing the turnaround in more Gen Z candidates applying, and in agencies adjusting their outreach to the Gen Z group.
That's excellent. I want to thank you both, Janay Gasparini and Jim Dudley. The book is called Recruitment and Retention of Gen Z Law Enforcement Officers. Thank you both so much for being on the show.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Do you know how to find these show notes or the episode notes of a particular episode? If you're listening on a podcast player on your phone, like Apple Podcast, if you tap the title of the episode, that'll take you to all of the notes, including the links to resources like Jim and Janay's book. Please give it a try. The views expressed here are the personal views of the hosts and our guests and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components, although it should. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.